Welcome back, everybody. We're here for another episode of Indie Reads Aloud. Today, Donovan M. Neal is with us, and he's going to share a little bit of his book, and it's called Hutari, Scion of Prophet and Crown. Did I pronounce that right, Donovan?
You did.
Yeah. See, every once in a while, the phonetics work. Not always, but sometimes. Um, so let me tell you guys a little bit about Donovan, and then we'll get into our conversation and reading. Um, Donovan Neal has formerly served as an ordained minister and instructor in the Bible for 20 years. He is the author of the indie published book, The Godspell Explained, and the Amazon best-selling novel, The Third Heaven, The Rise of Fallen Stars. Donovan is also a prolific songwriter and singer, having written over 50 different songs of praise and worship for the local church, and has performed in various schools and churches in the ministry of Christian rap. That's a really cool thing. When you can bridge those two worlds and make it work, super lots of respect for you for that one, sir, because I don't know how that works. He is now retired from the clergy and has taken up his pen to express what he has long been untapped. God has placed him to reach people through fiction in this second stage of his life. So, Donovan, we are super happy to have you with us. Tell me a little bit about this novel you're going to read today.
Well, Hutari is a fantasy novel for the general audience. It actually originated, I would say, sometime back in, 2011. So it's been a long work in progress, and I've had other
Yeah.
stuff I've been doing to finally bring it to fruition. But basically, it's a novel about a young man who is at the center of this epic situation between these gods. And I call it a cross between Avatar and Game of Thrones. And
Oh, that's an interesting mashup right there. Wow. Okay. It's going to
so
be an interesting episode.
yeah. So basically he finds out he has elemental powers, and but they come at a cost. And if he's not careful, he risks awakening this apocalyptic evil, which actually he's related to. And so there's this tension between the use of his powers and using them to stop present evil, but at the same time, as he uses them, or if he uses them to certain extents, it of course awakens this larger world ending situation. So he's always on this teetering situation. Uh,
So let me ask you what was the delay I mean, aside from career, family, all the, worldly things that make us put dreams on the back burner, what was the delay in bringing this story out? What was the thing that was holding you back from doing it?
Basically, I was working on the Third Heaven series, so I was in the midst of writing these other novels, which are Christian speculative fiction. And so while I was writing these novels, this idea came out in the earlier part of that series, but I did not have the bandwidth to try to put out a brand new fantasy series that was for the general audience, and in light of life.
Right, right. And 3 years of shutdown, and yeah,
Right. So
right.
once all of that got behind me, I said, okay, now is a good time to begin this new project, which will actually end up being, I call this in the same way Marvel has their cinematic universe. This is book one of what's going to be ultimately like a 9-book. Actually, it's going to be at least a 10-book series of multiple characters in a shared universe uh,
Wow.
that have to come together to ultimately deal with this apocalyptic evil and the thing that's driving it. So this is book one. This is where it all starts. Uh,
I'm trying to write a 4-book series right now, and I can't even imagine 10. That's even a bigger thing to take. I can't imagine. Wow. Okay. Well,
it's pretty good.
I'm super excited to hear a piece of this tonight. This is, I mean, I had you on the Indie Reads Aloud television program pre-COVID. We had a really good time on that episode. So, but this is different from what you've done before because it is not Christian fiction, it's general
Right.
audience fiction.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like another slice of your personality coming through.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm excited about it. Uh,
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely diving my toe into a whole different area now.
Yeah, swimming in a new pond, as we say in the duck world.
Absolutely.
All right. I am super excited to hear you read some of this. I think it's going to be fun. And as everyone knows, and I keep saying it ad nauseum, but truly, I'm a 6-year-old in recovery, and I just like it when people read out loud to me. So I'm the thing I'm a little hesitant about, though, is that if it turns out to be really good, it means there's another book on the top of my TBR that, I'm probably never going to finish in my lifetime. So it's a double-edged sword, I guess.
My Kindle is full of books, that's for sure.
I know. I know. It's crazy. All right. Mr. Neal, if you would please, I'd love to hear a piece of Hutari, Scion of Prophet and Crown. When you are ready, please take the microphone and read aloud.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. This is the prologue, um, starting at the very beginning. MMC sat at the storyteller's chair as he had every spring equinox for nearly 10 centuries. At this spot within the city's center, he would tell the story of the creation and of the 4 clans. As has been the custom for many years, the clans would bring their youth to him to initiate their schooling, an education that would begin by hearing the story that underpinned all Bussar culture and thought, the provenance of gods and men. Parents slowly gathered around him and set their children in a semicircle, and many sat with their young ones to listen as well. And the crowds filled the sitting rocks and trees with people who quieted themselves to hear the eldest of them all speak. And MC, seeing all had gathered, opened his mouth to begin the tale. Akuma, he said, did not know that his son would one day seek to kill him. For which parent among you, no, which father, would ever conceive love lost between himself and his son? But let me not rush to tell the tale of such troubles before the time. Much transpired before Enkai and Hesphus grew at odds with one another. For there was a time, children, even before the creation of men, that the Kifu did not roam Tanera and was not always as he is now. Even the walking dead was once loved by another, even loved by the father of all, Akuma. And why would not Akuma love his beloved son? A grouping of children sat around their teacher and looked at him with their gazes locked on MC's face, their attention fixed on his every word. And while little ones sat wide-eyed and some held their mouths open and fidgeting, while a few propped their chins with their hands, waiting for the clan's greatest storyteller to continue. But why, wisdom? Why did the son want to destroy his father? Said a boy. One child in attendance near to him, MC, held his head and tucked down his arms folded across his chest and muttered, I would kill my father if I could. And MC heard the boy's murmur, and his face became downcast as he overheard the words and spoke. What is your name, child? The young boy looked up, his eyes bore the hurt of a child withered from the drought of love, and his face gave no hint of a smile, but only a stoic seriousness untoward for a child who could not be over 10 years of age. I am Kemet, son of Siphet. For which clan do you come, my son? Said MC. I am from the Northern Watch, wisdom. And MC nodded and motioned for the boy to come and sit next to him in the storyteller's chair. The other children immediately wailed and vocalized their disapproval. I want to sit next to you. Some raised their hands and waved them wildly to draw the man's attention. But MC held his peace and looked at the boy, who reluctantly made his way through several disappointed and envious children to sit next to the elder. MMC placed his hands lovingly on the boy's small cheeks and felt their warmth. He noted the bruising around his neck and spoke, "Did your father do this to you?" Kemet sheepishly turned his eyes away from MMC and replied, "Yes, wisdom." MMC inhaled knowingly and then sighed aloud. "Know that I will see that he will not hit you again. And though the bruising will heal, you must be careful to not let your heart become poisoned or Inkai, what have you. And that cannot be. Listen to the story, Kemet, and learn. Learn why you cannot allow the heart poison inside of you to take root and fester. Take heed, child, and mark my words." Kemet said nothing, but looked at the old man sheepishly and gave an affirming nod. MMC then turned to all that sat before him and said, "All of you hear me? What is the first lesson all must learn?" Various children whisked their hands wildly into the air for MMC to call on them. The old sage pointed to a young girl, and she stood upon his acknowledgement and spoke, "Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom. With all thy getting, get understanding." "That is very good, lady." "Well said indeed. Now all of you, listen to wisdom and get understanding, and hear the tale of creation from the book of Providence. For it is written that in the beginning, when Akuma had finished his making of the sky and the sky above the sky, he made one sky dark and set lesser lights to watch us while we slept. He then made the greater light of the day and released it to run its course through the lower sky. But of all that he made, he was most proud of the two children he made, twin boys, to which he would teach his wisdom so that in time they too might make lights and skies above skies. And he named them Hesphus and Inkai. Some children hissed when they heard the name Inkai, and MC lifted his hands to quiet them. "Did Akuma have a mommy and daddy wisdom?" asked one of the seated children. More adults gathered to hear the four clans' oldest member recall the story of the Book of Providence. Many took their seats, and the seated crowd grew even larger. MMC waited for the new arrivals to be settled, and he continued, "No, child, Akuma was the first, and it is from him that all things were made, and without him nothing could be made. But Akuma wanted to share who he was, and in the making of his son sought to create a family that would one day fill the night sky and the blue sky. And he charged the two sons to learn, even as you learn now, to sit at his feet and be tutored, to be taught how to handle the most precious of gifts he could ever give them. And they were to share what they had learned with those that would follow, the gift of everlasting life. But to do this, the boys needed to understand death. So making sure that they schooled themselves, Akuma created a book that contained the sum of all his wisdom and gave it to both of them to study. And he left them for a season to prepare them for the lessons that upon his return, each might make his first living thing. But time passed, and Akuma did not return with the boys' thought. And so alone and without their father, Hesphus determined to continue in his studies as his father had charged them. But Inkai did not so. He set aside his studies, believing he had learned enough, and took it upon himself to create before the time. Inkai was determined to create a realm and life apart from his father. Inkai then left Hesphus to his studies and walked a distance into the great void, and there created land in between light and darkness, a realm of eternal twilight. And Inkai named the place the Duat. And he placed the realm next to his father's, and thinking to impress him, he took dust from his skin, and from it fashioned a people as countless as the snow in the white lands. And he breathed into them, and gave them his life, and he named them the Nephtes. And they were indeed beautiful to behold, and powerful beyond the measure of any mortal man, and each was as different to one another as you are to me. And they towered and walked through the Duat, and brought a semblance of light to its dimness, and for a time, all was good for Inkai and his newly created children. But Inkai was not skilled in creating life, and it was soon revealed that the children lacked food to sustain themselves. And though the light of life within them burned bright, it burned so quickly from within that they became disfigured, and in time, their bodies grew deformed, and some hungered so that they even turned on themselves to consume each other's flesh. But once filled with new life, they returned to their former beauty and power. But when famished, they were like the beasts of the field and would lose all sense of control. And Inkai did all that he could to keep them fed, but it was beyond even him to satisfy their incessant hunger for life. And they all became mad, such that they even turned on him to consume him alive and take the power that the father Akuma had placed within him. Inkai was then forced to fight with his children to stay alive and became trapped in the Duat, and he could not leave lest the Neftis escape and consume his brother. Hesphus, who had continued in his study of wisdom, had finished his lesson, and when checking on his brother's progress, noticed his sibling was nowhere to be found within the celestial realm that Akuma had created. And so he looked into the distance of the void, and he saw that a new plane existed, but one not made by his father. Hesphus then called out to Inkai and noted a door to this new realm, and as he went to open it, he heard his brother call out to him from within and warned him away and to not open the door. And Hesphus, seeking to save his brother, and knowing that his father worked behind the veil of existence, summoned him so that he might save his brother from the creatures he had made. And Akuma, hearing his son's prayer, returned as bidden. And when he had crossed from one existence into this one, he knew what his son Inkai had done. Akuma then entered the Duat and rescued Inkai from the dark realm and fended off the Neftis and saved his son alive. And he sealed the Neftis within the Duat so they could not escape. MMC paused to see if his audience was paying attention, and the crowd of children was silent, as many adults and children sat at his feet, while some leaned or sat upon rocks and others sat in the tree branches to get a view, and his story enchanted all. "Why did Inkai create the Duat wisdom?" said a young mother seated with her daughter and son. "That is a good question, but the books are silent and leave us to our thoughts on the matter. But though he was a demigod, Inkai seemed to have fallen to the most common faults that besiege us men: pride. For he thought more highly of himself than he should, and this led to his thinking that he could do what Akuma could do. But tell me, have you ever wanted to impress? Have you ever wanted to make others think more favorably of you?" One young girl remarked, "One time when the children of my village went to play kicker, I wanted them to pick me so badly that I tried showing them how good I could kick, that when I tried to kick the ball, I missed it and ended up falling and breaking my foot." "Ah," said MC. "And did you feel foolish after it?" "I did, but Mame told me I do not have to be picked for everything, and I must be careful to be influenced by the good and never to show off. Your Mame has taught you well and has passed on to you wisdom from Akuma. For Akuma would not seek you to impress. No, Akuma would have you to be who he made you to be. Do you think you can do this, child?" The girl smiled widely and nodded. "Good," said NMC. The old man then knelt down to Kemet to see how he fared and noted that the boy's eyes drew to someone in the distance, and NMC followed his gaze to a man who leaned against a tree. NMC whispered to him, "Is this your father?" Kemet nodded. NMC smiled. "Have no fear, child, for wisdom will see him soon." Kemet smiled slightly and he scooted closer to NMC. "Now, where was I?" "Akuma rescued Inkai," said a girl. "Ah, yes, thank you. Yes, so Akuma rescued Inkai from his creations and sealed the Neftis in the Duat so they could not escape. Now, some have over the years asked why Akuma did not destroy Inkai's creation. But the past fathers tell us from Umbiliki that Akuma prefers not to destroy. So he devised a plan to heal the creation of his son had made in his hubris. Akuma then turned to Hesphus, who had obeyed his father and who completed his father's teaching as instructed. And he took his obedient son, and together they crafted the physical realm and our world, and Akuma allowed his son Hesphus to name it. And Hesphus named it Tanera. Inkai watched his father and brother make Tanera, and was even more beautiful than the realm he had created alone. And Akuma allowed Hesphus to fill Tanera with all manner of birds, fish, plants, and animals. And Akuma was pleased. For Hesperus was wise in how he crafted, and he made Tanera thrive with life so that it could sustain all that he created. Thus Hesperus set all living things in place as his father and his brother watched. And Hesperus fashioned his designs with wisdom, so that all things held purpose, and the whole of nature was in balance and harmony prevailed. And the magic of Tanera was strong, and it held. Akuma then seeing all this son had made, took from the ground dirt, and with it fashioned a creature he called a man. And with this vessel, Akuma gave life from his own breath, and he became a living soul, and no creation of Hesperus or Inkai, save the two brothers, had held the life force of Akuma himself. Akuma then assured Inkai that the man he had created held the key to removing the pollution from the realm Inkai had made. And that's when men's studies were complete. Men would ascend and take their place next to him and his brother, and together they would heal the Neftis and free them from the Duat, and that all of creation might be whole and one, and there would be no more division between the realms. Did Hesperus love Inkai wisdom, said a child. Oh, yes, he did, little one. In fact, it was Hesperus' love for his brother that made him search for him while he realized he was absent from his studies. And it was the love of Akuma that caused Inkai's father to rescue him from the Duat. Hesperus loved Inkai very much, but alas, Inkai did not return his brother's affection. But when Inkai made Tanera and placed the man to live in it, he gave Hesperus dominion over the entire material realm of men and to steward all of Tanera. And for this act, Inkai's eye became evil toward his brother and his father. And I'll stop there. I think because I have about 6 seconds left.
Thank you very much. That's an amazing opening to this book. You've created such interesting lore. I can definitely feel the influence of Greek mythology and biblical mythology as well, creationism. What was the thing that you worked most at to not sound like something else?
Oh, I tried to incorporate a lot of, and you see it more later in the book, African mythology. So, for example, the
Cool.
Duat, Hesperus comes from African mythos.
Okay.
Akuma has both an African as well as an Oriental mythos there in terms of the origination of the name. So as you delve more into it, in the same way with Game of Thrones, you have multiple kingdoms and different things like that. You realize there are
Sure.
multiple, there are clans, there are villages, there are again kingdoms, and so as the book goes on, it expands out where you realize the protagonist is part of just this larger world. So
Fantastic.
yeah, this prologue just introduces really the origin story about it. It creates the context, the backdrop of the life of the
Yeah.
protagonist.
Yeah, it absolutely sets our stage for characters and scene and setting. I got a definite feel of time listening to that passage. It's very, very cool. What are you finding is the biggest challenge in taking on such an ambitious project?
Oh, making sure that you don't forget all the different pieces that you've added in the world building.
Yeah. When you release the books, are you planning on releasing them in sequence as you write them, or is your plan to write the entire series and then release them individually after that?
So the plan is just I'm well, I guess we'll see. As of right now, the plan is to release them as the books are finished.
Okay.
And so uh, I think the biggest challenge that I have is because the 9 books are sets of 3. And so each of the 3 books deals with a different character.
Okay.
So these characters, kind of like the Avengers, when you had Thor, they're pivotal characters, Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America. So these 3 characters eventually come together to deal with this larger threat. And so this book 1 is book 1 of actually it's going to be 4 books for this particular piece. Is one of the characters. And so simultaneously in the world, there's
Right.
this other these other 2 characters
Right. So
So
you're simultaneously layering your character arcs.
correct,
That's very fun.
correct.
It's
So
super ambitious, and I applaud you, and I give you all sorts of huge props for doing it, because that's a huge undertaking, and I'm just not that brave.
well,
My 4-book series that I've been working on for half a dozen years now, um, it's all in a single timeline. So I can't even imagine what that timeline layering would be like.
oh yeah, since it spans from beginning to creation, what you realize is that when you get to the end of the prologue, you realize, so the two brothers end up going to battle against one another. One of the brothers is killed. Before that brother is killed, he creates this character,
Okay.
and he sends him down to Tenera, Earth. What you find out is that by the time you get to the end of the prologue, the character that is speaking is this demigod that has come.
Oh, that's very cool. I like that so much.
So he's
Okay.
actually telling, he's not just a storyteller.
Yeah,
This is his story. He's
sure.
just lived so long, people die out and they don't realize really
Right,
who
right.
he is. They've
So
lost
so
memory.
he becomes the keeper of memory because he lived it. That's awesome. I like that. Well done, sir. Nice. Nice.
So yeah,
I'm
so
so glad that you came to read for me today and share your work with all of our listeners. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope as you deliver a new book into the wilds, you'll come back and read a little bit for us.
be happy to, be honored
That
to.
would be awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And I wish you great success. I think you're off to an awesome start with it.
Thank you.